What is up, Felix here for Thomann synthesizers, and today I'm going to be telling you why lately I've really enjoyed recording some of my synths through guitar amps with microphones, which at least inside the electronic music world is not as common of a technique as one might think. And what do we have here? For my monosynth I'm using the Moog Grandmother, which is my beloved monosynth, which I'm using a lot lately. Then obviously the two speakers here, the Fender Twin Reverb and the Harley Benton Tube 15-inch amplifier. Two microphones. I'm using the SM57, which is actually fairly cheap, below $100, and you're actually going to find this in pretty much any professional recording studio on earth. Because it's a low price doesn't mean it's low quality. This one's going to get you very far. And then from the much higher price range, I have this Roya microphone, which I'm going to use as a second microphone, just so I have two different signals, which I can then later on use in my production. But let's first maybe address the question why we would even want to send a synthesizer through an amplifier. For me personally, the main reason is pretty much any sound you're going to create electronically that's only running through cables can be fairly complex, but it's never going to be as complex and as nuanced as a sound that's actually happening inside of a physical space. Because if I, for example, clap in this room, this sound alone, it's infinitely complex because there's so many reflections happening in this room. And we can actually utilize this principle and take our synth, send it out through the amp into the real world, and then capture it again with microphones. Now you might ask, why wouldn't I just want to do this with a regular speaker like a studio monitor? And while you could do that, especially for the reverb part of this technique, these speakers are obviously designed to make a sound more rich and color it and not just reproduce it accurately. So that's why you have a bit more control of the character, and it's just made for taking a sound, putting it out there into the real world, coloring it, and then being captured again with a microphone. So now I'm going to take a MIDI pattern and play a little arpeggio with the synth. Let me activate the MIDI, and now it's going into the Fender Twin Reverb, where you can have a look at some of the typical controls you would find on a guitar amplifier like this. So first, one thing you want to take care of is that you're not going in as hot, because these are made for instrument level signals and this is a line level signal. So you first want to turn your synth all the way down pretty much to like 10% volume or something, and only then start to crank up the amplifier. Now let's have a look at these controls. Obviously here's the volume, but now we also have an equalizer. And another control that you're going to find on a lot of these guitar amplifiers is a reverb control. If you're lucky, it's an analog spring reverb, and actually both of these amps have an analog spring reverb. So if we start to engage this, we're going to hear some pretty interesting character already. So let's go. Alright, up next let's talk a little bit about microphone placement, because this is where a lot of the fun and creativity begins. And as usual, there's not going to be any rules that you have to follow, but there's going to be some tried and tested principles that are going to get you a long way. And for this one, you have to know there's two speakers inside of here. One is on the left, one is on the right, and the center of the cone is basically somewhere around here and here. And what's true pretty much always is the more in the center and the closer you are to the amp, the more dry and accurate the reproduction is going to be. And then the more further away you're going to get, the sound is going to be more reverby, because it's going to pick up more reflections from the room. And if I start moving it away from the center of the speaker, I'm going to get a different equalization. So the frequency response is going to be different. So let me start playing the arpeggio from the synth and listen carefully while I move the microphone around. Alright, so as you saw, depending on even very slight adjustments, the sound is sometimes altered very drastically. So there's a million different ways in which you can place the microphone, which brings me to the next subject. Obviously, you don't have to just decide for one microphone placement, but you can actually use several microphones with different positions, giving you various mono signals, which you can later use in your production to mix them together to create like pseudo stereo landscapes, or have a very clean microphone placed directly in the center and then have a room microphone 3 meters away from here or whatever. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the SM57 and the Roya, and I'm going to record them at the same time while I'm playing the Moog, and then I have 2 mono tracks which I can mix in many different ways, because it gives me just a lot more flexibility than just recording one microphone. Alright, and up next, because almost no one can actually afford one of these beasts because it's super pricey, let's see how far we can go with a fraction of the cost. This Harley Benton Tube 15 is by far the most affordable tube amplifier I could find, so that's why I picked it for this comparison. Let's see how it holds up. Alright, I think it stacks up beautifully against the Fender, especially if you consider that it's, I think, less than 1/10 of the price of the twin Reverb. So this could definitely be used in a production, I would say. And I really like the spring reverb, which is inside of here. It had a slightly different character than the twin reverb, but still lovely in its own way. So yeah, as you see, you don't have to spend like 3 grand. You could just, I don't know, start with something like an SM57 and a more affordable tube amplifier, and you'd still be good to use it in tracks, especially if you're just mixing it in as an additional room layer to your sound. And of course, you can also not just record the synth through the amplifier while you play it, but you could also first produce your track and then later take individual stems and send them through an amplifier once they are arranged and recorded, and then just send the whole stem through it, pick it up with a microphone, and then you have an additional wet layer and basically use it as sort of like an external scent effect. Alright, I guess that's it from my side for today. In case you have any questions, let me know in the comments. I'll try and get back to you ASAP. Apart from that, thanks for tuning in. See you next time. Peace out.